Greetings everyone, MatthewKadish here, author, evil genius, and 40-year-old white dude, coming at you with the first of what might be a series of critiques of the Marvel Studios film, Captain Marvel. I don't know if I'll make more than one critique of this film because Lord knows I could probably fill a book with the various issues that it has, so I guess it depends on whether enough people care about the movie and what I have to say about it. Also, please forgive me for the lazy nature of this video. I'm not very good at speaking off the cuff about these things, and I'm a better writer than I am a speaker, so I'm choosing to read off a script to illustrate my points, and so that you don't have to be subjected to my teen idol good looks for an extended period of time. I'm not really a big YouTuber, but I wanted to get this out in video form because I have a lot to say. I'll also be posting this critique up on medium.com, so look for the link to the written article in the description section of this video if you'd care to read my critique as opposed to listening to the dulcet tones of my voice. With that out of the way, let's talk about Captain Marvel, shall we? Warning, this critique will contain spoilers. Firstly, I want to say that this critique is not going to focus on things extraneous to the film's story. Any controversy surrounding Brie Larson, the film's feminist-leaning marketing, the Rotten Tomatoes score, and even Brie Larson's acting are going to be non-factors in my critique. My goal here is to look at Captain Marvel from a storytelling point of view. So in that sense, I'll be judging it on its merits as a piece of narrative fiction rather than any social or political commentary. Secondly, despite the title of this critique, I want to make it clear that I actually enjoyed Captain Marvel. I'm a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I've seen every one of their movies in the theater since Iron Man debuted in 2008, and I own all of them on home video, even the ones I didn't care for. I've also been a comic book fan since I first learned to read. In addition to that, I don't have any problem with female main characters. I even didn't care about the controversy surrounding Brie Larson going into the movie. All I wanted from Captain Marvel was to be entertained for a few hours, and by that metric, the movie actually succeeded. That being said, despite being entertaining, I'd rate Captain Marvel as a bad movie. And the reason for this is that it has numerous flaws in its story, its narrative structure, and its use of characterization. Though I found the movie to be enjoyable in the theater, upon reflection, there are a variety of issues with the movie that make it an objectively poor film from a storytelling perspective. Keep in mind that I am not trying to attack or belittle anyone who liked this movie. I believe everyone is entitled to like what they like, even if I disagree with them. That being said, it's certainly possible to like a bad movie. Take The Room, for example, the Tommy Wiseau film, not the one that Brie Larson won an Oscar for. Tommy Wiseau's The Room is an objectively bad film in every standard by which we judge movies. However, many people find the movie extremely enjoyable to watch. But enjoyability is a subjective measurement. What is enjoyable for one person may not be enjoyable for another, and vice versa. Because of this inconsistency, art cannot be effectively critiqued using only subjective methodology. In order to evaluate art, we have to look at it through proven theory and established concepts, as well as consideration for the craft behind the art as well. I know there are many people out there who don't believe any critique can be truly objective, but we can agree on the existence and use of these established concepts and how they have been successfully utilized throughout history. What we can debate is the application of these concepts to a specific work of art, and whether or not they are valid in critiquing it. For the purposes of brevity, I'm only going to discuss a single concept in relation to Captain Marvel in this critique, and the one I feel is the biggest issue affecting the movie. If I were to tackle every single problem with the film's narrative, I'd probably have 6 to 8 hours of video to share with you. So, what is the biggest issue plaguing Captain Marvel that makes it a bad movie? Well, in my opinion, it's the lack of a believable character arc for the film's main character, Carol Danvers. Let's talk about what a character arc is very briefly. A character arc is basically a term used to describe the transformation of a character throughout a narrative. The character begins as one sort of person and gradually transforms into a different sort of person in response to changing developments in the story. Since the change is often substantive and leading from one personality trait to a diametrically opposite trait, for example, from greed to selflessness, the term arc is often used to describe the sweeping change. In short, character arcs allow the audience to see a character transform. This is important because character transformation is a way to create audience empathy, which gives the viewer an emotional attachment to a character. If you think about Tony Stark in the first Iron Man film, his character starts as a selfish, greedy playboy who only cares about himself and the acquisition of material wealth. Throughout the course of the film, we see him transform into a character who cares about saving other people and fighting injustice, putting himself in harm's way, and using his incredible intellect for selfless reasons. The Tony Stark we see at the end of the first Iron Man film is very different from the one we see at the beginning, and we also saw the transformation that occurred to bring that change, and it cemented our attachment to that specific character. You'll see this concept of a character arc at play in other Marvel movies with great effect. The Thor movies have this, as do the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, and the Ant-Man movies, etc., etc., etc. Every movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe brings its characters through some sort of transformation, be it a physical one, an emotional one, or a moral one. In every Marvel movie, the main characters in the film different from how they began it in some way. The issue with Captain Marvel is that it is the first Marvel film that lacks an actual character arc. The Carol Danvers we see at the start of the movie is the exact same Carol Danvers that we see at the end of the movie. Her character does not so much transform as she does double down on what she's been all along, and who she is never challenged. The issue behind this narrative flaw is the choice to make the main narrative thrust of Captain Marvel an amnesiac story. This is often referred to as the search for identity plot, which is essentially an extension of the quest master plot. In the search for identity narrative, a character goes on a quest to discover who they used to be in order to help determine who they should be. In this quest, they find clues about their past life, oftentimes which they don't remember, and through finding these clues, they ultimately discover who they were in relation to who they currently are. This discovery either reverts them back to the person that they used to be, or they reject the past to become someone new altogether. A good example of this type of plot is 1990's Total Recall, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. In that film, we see the quintessential search for identity story, as the main character of Douglas Quaid discovers he's not a mild-mannered blue-collar worker stuck in a mundane existence, but rather a cutthroat and villainous spy embroiled in interplanetary intrigue. In that movie, we see Quaid discover who he used to be, and ultimately reject his old self in favor of the more virtuous and heroic person he's become. The issue where it relates to Captain Marvel is that because Carol Danvers doesn't remember who she is, it is difficult to define her at the start of the movie and throughout the narrative. From the first frame of the film to the final one, Danvers is a plucky, wisecracking, rebellious soldier with incredible powers. The only real change that is made to her is that she becomes more powerful by the end of the film. Even when she discovers who she used to be before she lost her memory, she was essentially the same person: plucky, wisecracking, and rebellious. Typically, in a search for identity plot, you want to have a contrast between who the character is currently and who they used to be. This not only gives the character a journey upon which to take, but allows the audience to more clearly witness the transformation of the character and grow attached to them. In the film, Carol Danvers is kidnapped by the Kree after an accident where she absorbs a large amount of cosmic energy, granting her incredible powers. This accident causes her to lose her memory, so she is essentially brainwashed by the Kree to believe she is one of them, and because of her powers, they train her to be a soldier in their army, making her believe the alien race of the Skrull are her enemy. From a narrative standpoint, this is a good setup for the quest of self-discovery the character of Carol Danvers is meant to go on. However, the problem is that Danvers is already too likable at the start of the movie. Ideally, the proper way to set this character up at the start of the film would have been to make her cold, emotionless, and ruthless. A character with little to no empathy. A true soldier in an evil army. Basically, the Terminator. Then, throughout the film, as she discovers who she used to be, she fights against the cold and emotionless training of the Kree to once more embrace her humanity and become the plucky, wisecracking, rebellious soldier that she used to be. The kind that fights to protect people as opposed to killing or enslaving them. I believe the decision not to do this was an attempt by the film's storytellers to set up a plot twist where it is revealed that the Kree are actually the bad guys and the Skrull are their victims. Unfortunately, this misguided attempt at a plot twist only serves to detract from Carol Danvers' story. Already, the Kree have been painted as villains in other Marvel films, most notably Guardians of the Galaxy, so that reveal isn't really a huge twist, especially considering the actual villain of Guardians of the Galaxy, Ronan the Accuser, appears in Captain Marvel. The filmmaker's desire to have a big plot twist midway through the film essentially sacrificed the necessary character arc to make Carol Danvers a truly great character the audience could connect to in favor of a single gotcha moment that most fans of the previous Marvel films could essentially see coming a mile away. Instead of giving Carol Danvers a transformative character arc, she's made to be a static character in favor of a plot point. Thus, the attempts to make Danvers a likable character from the beginning is necessary because she will be unchanging. However, what if the character of Danvers has started the film as being unlikable, and throughout her narrative journey she becomes likable? Would that have not been a stronger transformation to witness? After all, Marvel did this with the first Iron Man and Thor movies. I imagine Marvel's goal was to make Danvers more like Captain America, in the sense that the character of Steve Rogers is also static. He starts his first movie as an idealistic, iron-willed, and noble patriot, and that's how he remains throughout the movie. However, the audience gets to see Steve Rogers' struggle as the sickly wimp before he's transformed into the superhero Captain America. The audience is allowed to build great levels of empathy and connection with the character before he physically changes. And after that, we see the challenges that are set before him to try to get him to abandon his moral principles. Thus, though Captain America as a character is also static, he is constantly fighting against transformation, because to transform would be the death of the character and all he stands for. This is not present with the character of Carol Danvers. She never really stands for or symbolizes anything. Her hatred and persecution of the Skrulls stems from her being deceived about them, as opposed to knowingly embracing the Kree's xenophobic philosophy. Thus, the decision to turn against the Kree, who she believed to be her friends and family, never presents itself as a struggle, nor does her Kree training give her a moral standard to rebel against. Her relationship and connection with her mentor Yang-Rog becomes a non-factor in her decision to betray the Kree once she discovers they are the bad guys. There is no moment of indecision or moral dilemma where she decides to fight those she once considered to be friends and allies. She turns on a dime because, quote-unquote, it's the right thing to do. But from the beginning of the film, the character has wanted to do the right thing because she's a good person. Thus, there is no transformation for her to undertake, nor is there any challenge to the static nature of her character. A well-written film from a storytelling perspective would have placed the character of Carol Danvers first in the crafting of its narrative, above any plot twist the storyteller would have liked to incorporate. Due to placing a plot point ahead of characterization, I think it's pretty clear that Captain Marvel fell into the trap of trying to craft a perfect character rather than a flawed and interesting one. Choosing to utilize the search for identity plot, the film failed to create a contrast between the Carol Danvers we meet when the film begins and the Carol Danvers we see at the end of the film. When she finally discovers who she used to be, she does not have to accept or reject her previous identity, because that is who she already is. Thus, Carol Danvers lacks a character arc, and though she's a static character due to her amnesia, she has no real moral code to be challenged like Captain America does, because she does not know who she truly is until the end of the film. In fact, it could be argued that she spends the first half of her own movie as the bad guy. Oftentimes, with static characters, the narrative thrust of their stories are attempts to change who they are. Superman is seen as a paragon of virtue, a Christ figure at times. He's so powerful that nothing can really present any physical harm to him. Thus, his character is rather static. He is unchanging in his virtue and moral code. Because of this, some of Superman's best stories are when he's placed in a moral dilemma of some type. The same is true of Captain America. With a character of such power like Captain Marvel, it is vital that she have a strong moral center if she is meant to be static and without a character arc. But it is also vital that any narrative with her as the main character constantly challenge the static nature and attempt to change her so she has something to struggle against and challenges to overcome. But this was not done in Captain Marvel. Carol Danvers was a static character with no attempts to transform her, thus ultimately making her dull and uninteresting. I believe this is why so much of Captain Marvel's audience is ambivalent toward her, because they were never given the opportunity by the storytellers to actually connect to her through a character arc. Had Captain Marvel been a better crafted story, we'd have either gotten to see Carol Danvers transform in some way, or we'd have gotten to see the core of her character challenged in a manner that she had to effectively resist. Either of these things would have created the necessary emotional connection to the character to make the audience attached to her, but neither of these things were present in the actual movie. If you'd like to learn more about character arcs and story crafting, I'd highly recommend checking out the book Story by Robert McKee. It's an excellent resource for learning about the concepts I've discussed here. By now, you're probably tired of listening to my voice, so I'll simply thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope I was able to state my case as to why I believe Captain Marvel to be a bad movie from a storytelling perspective in an articulate way. And whether you agree or disagree with me, I really appreciate you taking the time to at least hear me out. If you enjoyed my rant, please be sure to like, subscribe, leave a comment, and all that good stuff. If you'd like me to dive further into the various narrative issues in Captain Marvel, let me know in the comments. If there's enough interest, I'm happy to do it. Thank you for watching. This is MatthewKadish, and I will talk to you next time.